Shalom. I want to give all honor, praises, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles at GMS, Great Millstone, for teaching this word in truth and sincerity and ruling well. Today's lesson is a review on Psalms chapter 83. So without further ado, let me get into it. A song or psalms of Asaph. Keep not thou silence, O Lord, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up thy head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. All right, so my first precept for this kind of reminded me of this script. So I got to go to Barak. Barak chapter 2. And this is verse 30. For I knew that they would not bear... Salaki, let me start over. This is 2 and 30 from Barak. Barak chapter 2 verse 30. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves. All right, let me say it again. For I know that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. That means we have had to forgotten ourselves by one means or another. All right, so I'm going back to Psalm 83. I'm going to reiterate verse 3 again. Verses 2 and 3. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and a tumult is just a loud noise. You know, they doing a lot of jaw jacking. And they that hate thee have lifted up thy head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. So this is the reason why you're being called by colors and, you know, all types of other things that you're not put into classifications and categories, because these people have taken crafty counsel against you to cut you off. All right, this verse 4. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Yeah, that's why you're being called blacks, Latinos, Indians, niggas, spics, wetbacks, tonto, you know, everything that you are not. Let me start at 5. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. So when you have a confederacy, that means you have different factions coming together, okay? And what are they doing? They're trying to consult against us, Israel, right? So now we're going to get to 6, 7, and 8, and we're going to see who these people are. 6. The tabernacles of Edom, the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes. Verse 7. Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher also is joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot, Selah. So, who are these people? You know, I did a search on some of these people, and from my best guesstimate, because a lot of these nations, they're here, but they're under different names today. So I also looked up the United Nations, because that's what this is talking about right now. The United Nations have come together, and they have to fight against the children of the Lord, the children of Israel, okay? So let's get into some of these. So I'm going to start at 6. I'm going to actually jump back up to 5. For they have consulted together with me, with one, Salakia, with one consent. They are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom. So I looked up some of these nations, and you know where they were situated and some of the peoples at the time. So the tabernacles of Edom, you know, if you've ever heard that the Edomite is the so-called white man, okay? And a tabernacle is nothing but a tent. So this is the tents or the houses, just like today. If you live with your family, you might have your immediate family. Then you might have like your brother, he has a family, or your sister, she has a family, but that's still part of your house. Just like the government has a White House, and then they have different branches, but they also have different little countries that they rule over, that they put their people into. So, you know, I'm gonna get into this category in this list that I have made up, because this is the United Nations members. So anything that I say any nation that I say post after, this is post 1945. And anything I say subjected after, that means it's just a subject to the tabernacle of Edom, okay? Because we already know most of these nations are subjected under America, but we're talking about the nations that Jake run, but they have puppet presidents or puppet governments put up over them by Edom. All right, so let's start this off. This is verse 6, the tabernacles of Edom. Let's get into this. So the nations I got were the nations that were listed on the United Nations website. I didn't just come up with this. France, USSR, UK, US, Argentina subjected, of course. Brazil subjected, of course. Dominican Republic subjected, of course. Salvador subjected. Paraguay subject. Greece, Ecuador subject. Guatemala subject. Honduras a subject. Netherlands, Mexico a subject. Norway, Panama a subject. Peru subject. Uruguay subject. Venezuela and Spain, which Venezuela is a subject. They had the BSSR, which, you know, is just part of Russia right now. Chile, which is subject. Cuba, which is subject. They got the Czechoslovakian Republic. They have Denmark, New Zealand, Luxembourg, Australia, Belgium, Bolivia, which of course is subject. All right, so now I'm gonna jump back to Psalms 83:6, because now we got the tabernacles of Edom. Those are the tabernacles of Edom. Those were the nations that I put under the category of tabernacles of Edom, Salakia. And the Ishmaelites of Moab. Okay, so these Ishmaelites of Moab will be, because Ishmaelite is just an Arab, but we're talking about more so these Middle East, more so by Asian countries, Moabs, okay? Moabites or Ishmaelites, Salakia. So this is some of the nations that I got. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Afghanistan, post, because it's post 1945, it wasn't an original. Bahrain, post. Jordan, post. Pakistan, post. Yemen, post 1945, all right? So these would fall under the category of these Ishmaelites of Moab, all right? Okay, then we got the Hagarenes, because we have the Ishmaelites of Moab, and then it says, and the Hagarenes, which Hagar is the mother of the Ishmaelites. And they stem from Abraham, because Abraham had a wife named Sarah, and Sarah had a handmaid named Hagar, and she bore him a son named Ishmael, and Sarah bore Abraham a son named Isaac. Isaac got the blessing. Ishmael did not get the blessing, okay? Ishmael did not get the blessing. But let's go into this, because we went over the tabernacles of Edom, the Ishmaelites of Moab. Now we're going over the Hagarenes, where it says, and the Hagarenes. So I looked up the Hagarenes, and yeah, it all said all of that nice stuff that I just went over. But it says they dwelt in Jatar. So this region is more so like the Greece and the Mediterranean, that Mediterranean region by Greece. So these are some of the nations. These are some of these nations that were listed on that website, the United Nations website. Armenia, post. Kazakhstan, post. Tajikistan, post. Turkey, Uzbekistan, you know, that's more so like the Eastern European Arabic type countries, you know, more so by Turkey, Yugoslavia, Uzbekistan, Armenia. All right, so those will fall under, and those will fall under the Hagarenes. All right, so verse 7, it says, it starts off with Gibal. Let me read the whole verse. Verse 7, Gabal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. So, okay, Gabal. Who is Gabal? Let me refer back to my notes. Who Gabal is. Salakia, bear with me. Okay, let me start this over. Verse 7, Gabal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines, and with the inhabitants of Tyre. Okay, now I got it. Gabal is Tyre. Because Gabal, when I looked it up, Gabal was just a place in Lebanon. So Tyre, Sidonians, the Lebanese, all of these dwelt in the same place. So these would be Assyrians. They will fall under Asher. They're dwelt in the same vicinity of one another. So these will be more so of the North African Arabs. And this is some of these nations that are part of this United Nations, which fall under the Assyrians of Tyre, Gabal, Sidon. So this is Iran, Lebanon, Syria, Liberia, Algeria, Egypt, Kuwait, post, Libya, post. All right. So now that we got Gabal out the way, and we got the inhabitants of Tyre out the way. So now we got Ammon. So now we got Ammon and Amalek and the Philistines. Now we know Ammon would be part of, Ammon and Moab are brothers. Ammon and Moab are brothers from Lot. They stem from Lot's children. But let's see who Moab, Ammon, and the children of Lot are, because in verse 8, which we're not there yet, but it says they have helped the children of Lot, Selah. So Ammon is a child of Lot. So these are some of the nations that fell underneath that portion, okay? The Republic of China, the Philippines, Cambodia, Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, post. Indonesia is post. Korea is post also. Mongolia is post. Japan, post. Vietnam, post. So these children of Lot, these are the Asian races. The Asian races of people, okay? And then it says Amalek. Amalek. So let me go back to verse 6. The tabernacle, verse 7, Salakia. Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. All right, so now we're at Amalek. And Amalek are these Eastern European Jews, which they falsely named themselves, okay? Eastern European Jews, all right? And these are some of the synagogue of Satan, but these are some of these nations that are part of this UN. Poland, Ukraine, Yugoslavia, Armenia, post. Bulgaria, post. Israel, post. Romania, post. Turkey, post. All right. And Turkey, I believe, can fall in line with Amalek or Hagar, because remember, Hagar is the Ishmaelites that dwelt in the Mediterranean region, and we know there's a lot of, all of those houses mixed at one time, because we know Esau, which is Edom, he had some of them Canaanite wives and took some Ishmaelite wives himself. So, all right, now we're gonna get to the Philistines. Who are these Philistines? And the Philistines, they go back to, I believe, Kaftor, but I believe they were Hamitic. But now, today in Philistine, which is just Palestinians, we know Arabs are there. And if you ever knew an Arab and who's from Palestine, they call themselves Philistines, all right? So, but these are like the African nations and, some of those Arabic nations in there, but more so, these are the Hamitic races of people. So this is some of the nations that fell under the Philistine lot of the UN. Ethiopia, India, South Africa, Bangladesh, Eritrea, post. Somalia, post. Sudan, post. And yeah, Bangladesh was post. All right. So what did they come together to do? Well, like it says in verse 4, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. All right. So what happened? In 1917, there was a Balfour Declaration. All right. Because I believe this United Nations didn't come till after World War I. And then they came up with a United Nations. But they had a Balfour Declaration. And what is a Balfour Declaration? It was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 announcing the support of a national home for Eastern European Jews in Palestine. All right. But and they made that happen later on down the line, because Israel became a nation state, a state nation in May 14th, 1948. So that's why they're called Jews, but we're called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, because like in verse 4, let me reiterate it again, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. All right. So I hope, I took the best shot at classifying and categorizing these nations as possible. So now that is done, let me start at 8 and I'm going to move on. Asher also is joined with them. They have helping the children of Lot, Selah. All right, so we already went over Asher, which is the Assyrians, and the children of Lot, which is those Asian countries, okay? Verse 9, Psalms 83. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kishon. So what is Asaph talking about? Do unto them as the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kishon, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. All right, so in order for us to even get that, we're gonna have to go into Judges, the 4th chapter, and I want to start at 12, so we can get some edification. All right, so this is Judges 4. I'm starting at 12. And they showed Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, Salakim. I want to start at Judges, I want to start at 12. And they showed Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, was gone up to Mount Tabor. And Sisera gathered together all his chariots, even 900 chariots of iron, and all the people that were with him, from Harosheth to the Gentiles unto the rivers of Kishon. And Deborah said unto Barak, Up, for this is the day in which the Lord hath delivered Sisera unto thine hand. Is not the Lord going out before thee? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. This kind of reminds me of that scripture. The Lord will come with 10,000s of his saints. All right. Continuing on at verse 15, and the Lord discomfited Sisera. So what is discomfited? That means when you embarrass somebody, when you put somebody to shame, okay? And the Lord discomfited Sisera and all his chariots and all his hosts with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot and fled away on his feet. But Barak pursued after the chariots and after the host unto Harosheth of the Gentiles, and all of the host of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left. Howbeit Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. For there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera, and said unto him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, fear not. And when he had turned into her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. And he said unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk, and gave him drink, and covered him. Again he said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of thee, and say, Is there any man here? That thou shalt say, No. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent, and took an hammer in her hand, and went softly unto him, and smote the nail in his temple, and fastened it to the ground. For he was fast asleep and weary, so he died. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him, and said unto him, Come, and I will show thee the man whom thou seekest. And when he came into her tent, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temple. So God, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, subdued on that day Jabin the king of Canaan before the children of Yasharallah, and the hand of the children of Yasharallah prospered and prevailed against Jabin the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin the king of Canaan. All right, so that was So in order to get some edification on verse 9 and 10, do unto them in Psalms 83, do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kishon, which perished at Endor, they became as dung for the earth. So that was a great slaughter and a great deliverance, but that also brings me to Acts chapter 2. Because that has something to do, because this is all the end times prophecy. All times in end times prophecy. I'm getting tongue-tied, tongue-twisted. So this is an end times prophecy. Let me see. I'm going to, this is Acts chapter 2. And I'm going to start at verse 17. And it shall come to pass in the last days, because Psalms 83 is a end times prophecy. So let me start over. This is Acts chapter 2, verse 17. And it shall come to pass in the last day, saith God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young man shall see visions, and your old man shall dream dreams. Excuse me. And on my servants and on my handmaids I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy. So when we go back to Judges 4, that was about a man and a woman being a prophet. Now, of course, it was all orderly, but that's why I had to go to Acts 2 and 17, because this is an end times prophecy. That's why they state make them like Jabin and Sisera, because Jabin and Sisera, the judges at that time was Deborah and Barak, okay? And that's why in the last days he's gonna pour out this. The Lord is gonna pour out the Spirit. The Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai is gonna pour out His Spirit on His sons and His daughters to prophesy and dream dreams. All right. So, with that being said, let me go back to Psalm 83. And I'm going to start it, run it back from 8. O Lord, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai of hosts, hear my, Salaki, I'm in the wrong one. I'm going to start at 9. Do unto them as unto Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kishon. This is Psalm 83. 10. Which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. All right, so we already went over that. Now we're going to break down 11. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb. Yeah, all their princes as Zebah and Alzalmunna. All right, and where do we find Zebah and Zalmunna? Let's go to Oreb and Zeb for one. And to go to Oreb and Zeb, we got to go to Judges chapter 7. So, Salakia, bear with me while I get that. Judges chapter 7, and let me start at 7. So we could get these stories, so we could know who they're talking about, and we could know what's gonna happen in these end times, because there's nothing new under the sun. These same stories keep playing out in one way, shape, or form. So I'm talking, this is Judges chapter 7. And I'm going to start at 7. And the Lord said unto Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and let all the other people go, every man unto his place. So the people took victuals in their hand and their trumpets, and sent all the rest of Israel every man unto his tent, and retained those 300 men. And the host of Midian was beneath him in the valley. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, Arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it into thine hand. But if thou fear to go down, go thou with Pua thy servant, go down to the host, and thou shalt hear what they say, and afterward shall thine hands be strengthened to go down unto the host. Then went he down with Pharaoh his servant, with Pua his servant, Salakia, unto the outside of the armed men that were in the host, and the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east. Okay, that's what were the same ones that he mentioned in Psalm 83, lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude. I mean, there was a lot of them. And their camels were without number, as the sand by the seaside for multitude. And when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellow, said, Behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the house of Midian, and came unto a tent, and smote it that it fell, and overturned it that the tent lay along. And his fellow answered and said, This is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. For into his hand hath God delivered Midian and all the hosts. And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped and returned into the host of Israel. And host is just another word for army, okay? And returned to the host of Israel, and said, Arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian. And he divided the 300 men into the 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand, with empty pitchers, and lamps within the pitchers. And he said unto them, Look on me, and do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be that as I do, so shall ye do. When I blow with a trumpet, I and all that are with me, then blow ye the trumpets also on every side of the camp, and say, The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men that were with him came unto the outside of the camps in the beginning of the middle watch, and they had but newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpet. So they had changed their watches. They had newly set their watches. So another person had clocked in on their watch, okay? And they had blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers that were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers, and held the lamps in their left hands, and the trumpets in their right hands, to blow withal. And they cried, The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. And the 300 blew the trumpet, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the hosts. And all the hosts fled to Beth Shittah and Zerah, and to the border of Abel Meholah unto Tabbath. And the men of Israel gathered themselves together out of Naphtali, and out of Asher, and out of all Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, saying, Come down against the Midianites, and take before them the waters unto Beth Barah and Jordan, till all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together, and took the waters unto Beth Barah and Jordan. And they took the 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb, and they slew Oreb upon the rock. Oreb and Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side of Jordan. So he's asking the Lord, hey, Lord, do what you did to Oreb and Zeb and give me their heads, okay? Give me their heads. So that's what the Lord is going to perform. That's what he's talking about in verse 9 and 10. Give me the heads just like you gave Gideon the Midianites. Had him triumph over the Midianites. You gave the heads of Oreb and Zeb, two of their leaders, okay? So let me jump back to Psalm 83 just so we don't lose. Just so we don't lose where we at. So I'm starting at verse 9. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kison, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb. Yeah, Oreb and Zeb got their heads cut off. Yeah, all their princes as Zebah and Zalmunna. And if we get to Zebah Zalmunna, we have to go to the next chapter in Judges chapter 8. Right? So this is Judges chapter 8. And I'm going to start at verse 3. Judges 8:3. God have delivered into your hands the princes of Midian. So this is still Gideon and the 300, okay? It's just the next chapter over. Because they already killed Oreb and Zeb, cut off Oreb and Zeb's head. But now we're trying to get to Zalmunna. Zebah and Zalmunna. So this is Judges 8:3. God have delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb, and what was I able to do in comparison of you? When their anger was abated toward him, when he had said that, and Gideon came to Jordan, and passed over, he and the 300 men that were with him, faint yet pursuing them. And he said unto the men of Succoth, give, I pray you, loaves of bread unto the people that follow me, for they be faint, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian. And the princes of Succoth said, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thy hands, that we should give bread unto thine army? And Gideon said, therefore, when the Lord hath delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And he went up thence to Peniel and spake unto them likewise. And the men of Succoth had answered him, Salakim. And he went up unto Peniel and spake unto them likewise, and the men of Peniel answered him, as the men of Succoth had answered him. And he spake also unto the men of Peniel, saying, I come again in peace. When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Kakor, and their houses with them were left of all the hosts of the children of the east, for there fell 120,000 men that drew sword. Men that drew sword. And Gideon went up by the way of them that dwelt in tents on the east of Nabah and Jogbeh, and smote the host, for the host was secure. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued after them, and took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and discomfited all the hosts. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from the battle before the sun was up, and caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired of him. And he described unto the princes of Succoth and the elders thereof, even 70 men. So a score is 20. So 3 times 20 is 60, plus 17 would be 77 men. All right. So this verse 15, and he came unto the men of Succoth and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom ye did upbraid me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thy hands, that we should give bread unto thy men that are weary? And he took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness, and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. Yeah, so he beat their ass with the thorns and the briars, because they was talking that mess. All right, so this is verse 17, chapter 8, Judges. And he beat down the tower of Penuel. All right, let me start at 16 again. And he took the elders of the city, and the thorns of the wilderness, and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. And he beat down the tower of Penuel, and slew the men of the city. Then he said unto Zebah and Zalmunna, What manner of men were they whom ye slew at Tabor? So basically, when he captured Zebah and Zalmunna, he went back to those little city towns, Penuel and Succoth, with Zebah and Zalmunna captive, just to show them. Okay, so this verse 18. Then he said unto Zebah and Zalmunna, What manner of men were they whom you slew at Tabor? And they answered, As thou art, so were they. Each one resembled the children of a king. And he said, They were my brethren, even the sons of my mother. As the Lord liveth, if ye had saved them alive, I would not slay you. And he said unto Jether his firstborn, Up and slay them. But the youth drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise thou and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Then the men of Israel said unto Gideon, Rule over us, both thou and thy son, and thy son's son, as also, for thou hast delivered us from the hand of Midian. And Gideon said unto them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. Okay, now these stories are important, because within these stories are important tidbits for us to gather, just like these, to let us know that these are end times prophecies. So in the end times, which is nothing about the world is going to end, but it's just going to be a cataclysm, a nuclear holocaust, a disaster that's going to kill off a lot of people. And that's why these chapters are imperative to know and to edify the people, because once you get, okay, like Acts 2, where it says the sons and the daughters will prophesy, and Asaph is referring to some of the enemies that Barak and Deborah had fought. Then in the next verse, he's referring to these kings that Gideon took down with 300 people. So that's a remnant. That's a remnant, because I forget how many people, says earlier in chapter 7, how many people he turned back, because it was too many people for the Lord to get his glory. So the Lord only works with a few people. All right, so hopefully that was edifying. Those stories were edifying. But these are end times prophecies, and that's why so much things parallel, so many verses parallel with them. But let me get back on track, because I feel like I had another script that I wanted to hit. But I'm going, so Salakia, bear with me while I go over these. I'm just going over my notes. Alright, so this is let me get back to Psalms. This is Psalm 83 again. And we're starting at 12. Cause start at 11. Make their nobles like Oreb, like Zeb, and like Zeb. Yeah, all their princes as Zeba and as Zalmunna. We already went over that. This is verse 12. Who said, let us make to ourselves the house of God in possession? Who said, let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession? So they want to take the house of God in possession, okay? Just like how it was said earlier, they want to cut us off from being a people, and they want to take the house of God and possess it. And that's why you had that Balfour Declaration, and that's how Israel became a nation and a state. And who dwells in Israel right now? Well, those Palestinians, those Arabs, but it was meant for those Eastern European Jews, and those are Amalekites. So Amalek is the chief house of Edom and rules over them. All right, so let's get back to 12. Who said, let us take ourselves the houses of God in possession? And we already know who started that slave trade. That was the chief house. That was Amalek. That came with this crafty council, was also part of the slave trade to try and destroy us and cut us off. But it was ultimately from the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai. Verse 13. Oh my God, make them like wheels as the stubble before the wind. Okay, so where do we get this from? Where do we get this from? This is verses 13. Oh my God, make them like a wheel as the stubble before the wind. So in order to get that, we have to go to Ezekiel 1 to get that understanding of make them as a wheel, make them as stubble before the wind. So bear with me as I go to Ezekiel 1. And I'm going to start at verse 4. Ezekiel 1:4. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, and a great cloud and a fire, enfolding itself in brightness, was about it. And out of the midst thereof was a color of amber, and out of the midst of fire. Also out of the midst therefore came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of man. And each man had hands, and a man under Salakim. Let me start that over. This is Ezekiel 1:4. And I look, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud and a fire enfolding itself, and brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof was the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. All right, so this is talking about spaceships coming out, talking about angels coming out this spaceship, right? And they had an appearance like man. So this is going back to 13 through 15. Oh my God, make them like a wheel. Because even in I forget what chapter that is, or is it still the same, but I forgot it. It says the Ezekiel describes that same angelic force as being a wheel inside of a wheel. So, but those wheels represent UFOs, the chariots of the Lord, okay? And that fire, they have that a concentrated fire, just like how they have it now, a concentrated fire to shoot lasers, all right? Excuse me. So this is verse 13 again. Oh my God, make them like a wheel as the stubble before the wind. So what is the stubble before that wind? Because we already figured out, we went to Ezekiel and said that whirlwind is those chariots also. But what else is these chariots? Let me hit Isaiah 17. Let me hit Isaiah 17. Bear with me, please. And this is 12 through 14. I'm in the book of Isaiah, chapter 17, starting at 12. Woe to the multitude of many people which make a noise like the noise of the sea, and to the rushing of nations that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. Okay, now these whirlwinds can be, actual whirlwind, a tornado. And when you have a tornado, you have many things blowing and flopping around, but these winds also is that destroying wind from nuclear annihilation, but it's also that whirlwind from the chariots, that wheel inside of a wheel that just evolves around one another. It's from that chariots, okay? So this is verse 14. And behold, at evening tide trouble, and before the morning he is not. This is the portion of them that spoil us, and the lot of them that rob us. So let me get it again. This is Isaiah 17, 12 through 14. Woe to the multitude of many people which make a noise like the noise of the seas, and the rushing of the nations that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. And behold, at evening tide trouble, and before the morning he is not. This is the portion of them that spoil us, and the lot of them that rob us. So that sounds just like a few of the stories that we went into of Judges, okay? And it precepts verses 13 and 15. Let me get back to that. Psalm 83, 13. Oh my God, make them like a wheel as the stubble for the wind, as the fire burneth a wood, and as the flame setteth the mountains on fire. All right. So persecute them with thy tempest, and make them afraid with thy storm. So these tempests and those storms also are from those whirlwinds, all right? In those chariots. That's what those chariots cause. That's also the four angels being bound up and then being loose for the time, binding up the destruction until it's time. So with those four angels comes that fire, okay? And just like it says, let me get this. I'm gonna go Back to 13. Oh my God, make them like a wheel as for the stubble before the wind. Let's see who this stubble is. Let's see who this stubble is, because the Lord don't make no mistakes when he talk. He don't stutter. And I better stop that, because sometimes I be having a little speech impediment. But so this is Obadiah 1 verse 18. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord hath spoken it. There it go right there. That's the money shot. That's who the stubble is, because the Edomites are the main people that started this little